Captain Daeho Kim stared at the dark shape floating in space through the main screen of his ship. The object was huge, bigger than anything he had seen in his 20 years of salvage work. It hung there in the empty space between stars, black as night and silent as death. "What do you think it is?" asked Somin Park, his young engineer. She stood next to him on the bridge, her eyes wide with wonder. Somin was only 25, but she was the best engineer Daeho had ever worked with. She could fix anything and figure out any machine. "I don't know," Daeho said slowly. "But it's big enough to make us all rich if we can salvage it." The bridge of the Prosperity's Edge was small and cramped. Most salvage ships were not fancy. They were built to work, not to look good. Daeho's crew was small too. Just 6 people total. But they were good at what they did. Dalvex, the ship's first officer, walked over to them. He was tall and thin, with green scaly skin and yellow eyes. His people, the Saurians, were known for being careful and smart. They never rushed into danger. "Captain," Dalvex said in his slow, careful voice, "my scans show the object is very old. Maybe 10,000 years or more. But I cannot read what it is made of. The metal does not match anything in our databases." Daeho nodded. That was strange, but not impossible. The galaxy was full of old things that people had forgotten about. Sometimes salvage crews found ships from races that had died out long ago. Those were usually the most valuable finds. "Any energy readings?" Daeho asked. "None," Dalvex replied. "The ship appears to be completely dead. No power, no life signs, no active systems." Dr. Veltar floated over to join them. She was an Etherian, made of living crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Her people were old and wise, and they knew more about ancient history than anyone else. "This is fascinating," Dr. Veltar said, her voice like the sound of wind through crystal caves. "The architecture is unlike anything I have seen. The proportions suggest the builders were humanoid, roughly the same size as humans, but the technology, it is far beyond anything in our current understanding." Somin stepped closer to the screen. "How big do you think it is?" "My measurements show it is nearly 3 kilometers long," Dalvex answered, "and about 1 kilometer wide. It could have housed thousands of beings." Daeho whistled softly. Ship that size would have cost more to build than most planets made in a year. Whoever built it had been very rich and very powerful. Any idea what happened to it?" Somin asked. Dr. Veltar's crystal body pulsed with thought. "There are no signs of battle damage. No weapons fire, no hull breaches from attacks. It simply appears to have been ... abandoned." That was even stranger. Who would abandon a ship like that? And why had it been floating here for 10,000 years without anyone finding it? Jinwoo Lee, the ship's communications officer, looked up from his station. "Captain, I've been trying to contact the ship on all frequencies. Nothing, not even an automatic response." Jinwoo was quiet most of the time, but he was good with languages and computers. If anyone could make contact with an alien ship, it would be him. "What about the navigation computer?" Daeho asked. "Does it show this ship on any star charts?" "No, sir," Jinwoo replied. "This area of space is marked as empty. The ship is not on any official records." Daeho thought about this. An unknown ship floating in empty space with no records of its existence. It was either the find of a lifetime or a trap waiting to kill them. "Captain," Somin said, "I'm reading some strange energy patterns from the ship. Very faint, but they're there. It's like the ship is sleeping, not dead." Dalvex's eyes narrowed. "That concerns me. In Saurian history, we have legends about ships that sleep in the void. They are not things to be disturbed." "Legends are just stories," Daeho said. But he felt a chill run down his spine anyway. Dr. Veltar moved closer to the screen. "The crystal patterns in the hull. They remind me of Etherian meditation matrices, but these are far more complex. If this ship is sleeping, as Somin suggests, then something might wake it up." "What kind of something?" Daeho asked. "I do not know," Dr. Veltar admitted. "But I would suggest extreme caution." Daeho looked at his crew. They were all good people, and he trusted them with his life. But this ship made him nervous. Still, they were salvage operators. Finding old ships and selling them was how they made their living. "Myra," he called to his pilot, "take us in for a closer look. But stay ready to run if things go wrong." Myra Okonkwo was the best pilot in the Outer Rim. She could fly anything and get out of any trouble. She nodded and started moving the ship closer to the mysterious object. As they got nearer, more details became clear. The ship was not just big, it was beautiful. The hull was covered in patterns that seemed to flow like water. Strange symbols were carved deep into the metal. The whole thing looked like it had been built by artists, not just engineers. "Those symbols," Jinwoo said. "I've never seen anything like them. They're not in any language database." "They're not random?" Dr. Veltar observed. "There is meaning here, but it is beyond my understanding." Somin was studying her instruments. "Captain, I'm getting some weird readings. The hull seems to be absorbing our scanner beams. It's like the ship is drinking our energy." "That's impossible." Thalvex said. "I know it's impossible," Somin replied. "But that's what my instruments are telling me." Daeho made a decision. "Myra, hold position here. We're going to suit up and go aboard. If this ship is as old as we think, there might be technology inside worth more than our ship." "Captain," Thalvex said, "I must advise against this. We know nothing about this vessel or its creators." "That's exactly why we need to go aboard," Daeho replied. "We're salvage operators. This is what we do." Somin was already heading for the equipment lockers. "I'll get the cutting tools ready. If the ship is dead, we might need to cut our way in." "Wait," Dr. Veltar said. "Look at Section 7 of the hull. There appears to be an opening there." Everyone looked where she pointed. Sure enough, there was a gap in the hull about 50 meters long. It looked like something had torn the metal open from the inside. "Well," Daeho said, "that saves us the trouble of cutting. Jinwoo, you're with me and So Min. Thalvex, you have the bridge. If we're not back in 4 hours, leave without us." "Captain," Thalvex protested. "That's an order," Daeho said firmly. "This crew doesn't take stupid risks. If something happens to us, get back to civilization and report what you found here." As they prepared to board the ancient ship, none of them knew they were about to make the most important discovery in galactic history. The ship that had waited 10,000 years was finally going to reveal its secrets, and those secrets would change everything. The inside of the ancient ship was nothing like what Daeho had expected. As soon as they stepped through the hull breach, emergency lights began to glow along the walls. The lights were soft and blue, casting strange shadows in the corridor. That's impossible," Somin whispered through her helmet radio. "This ship has been dead for thousands of years. How can the lights still work?" Daeho looked around carefully. The corridor was wide enough for 4 people to walk side by side. The walls were smooth and covered with the same flowing patterns they had seen on the outside. But here, inside the ship, the patterns seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. "The artificial gravity is working too," Jinwoo said, testing his footing. "My suit says the gravity is almost exactly the same as Earth normal. How is that possible?" Somin asked. "There's no power source? Our scans showed this ship was completely dead." Daeho touched one of the walls with his gloved hand. The metal felt warm, even through his thick gloves. "Maybe it's not as dead as we thought." They moved deeper into the ship. The corridors branched off in many directions, creating a maze of passages. Everything was built for beings about the same size as humans. The doorways were the right height, the corridors the right width. "This is very strange," Jinwoo said. "Most alien ships I've seen are built for their creators. But this ship could have been built by humans." "Humans didn't exist 10,000 years ago," Somin pointed out. "At least not as a spacefaring race." They came to a large chamber filled with what looked like sleeping pods. Hundreds of them lined the walls in neat rows. Each pod was made of the same dark metal as the ship's hull, with a transparent top that looked like crystal. "A colony ship?" Daeho suggested. "Maybe they were going to settle a new planet." Somin walked over to one of the pods and looked inside. It was empty, but there were controls on the side covered in the strange symbols. These controls. They look almost familiar, like I should know what they do. Be careful, Deho warned. Don't touch anything yet. They continued exploring. The ship was huge, with level after level of corridors and chambers. They found what looked like workshops, storage areas, and living quarters. Everything was perfectly preserved. As if the crew had just stepped out for a moment. In one chamber, they found something that made them all stop and stare. The walls were covered with star maps. But these weren't like any star maps they had ever seen. The constellations were wrong, the star patterns unfamiliar. These charts don't match any known stellar cartography, Jinwoo said, studying the glowing displays. It's like they're showing a completely different part of the galaxy. Or a very old part, Somin suggested. Stars move over time. These maps might show how the galaxy looked thousands of years ago. Dr. Veltar's voice came through their radio from the Prosperity's edge. Team, I am detecting some unusual energy fluctuations from your location. Please be cautious. We're being careful, Deho replied. But this place is amazing. The technology here is beyond anything I've ever seen. They found more chambers filled with equipment they couldn't identify. Some machines were the size of buildings, with complex networks of tubes and crystals. Others were small and delicate, covered in symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. Captain, Somin said, I'm starting to think this wasn't just a colony ship. Look at this. She was standing in front of a wall covered with what looked like weapon diagrams. The images showed devices that could destroy planets, weapons that could tear holes in space itself. This was a warship, Deho realized. The most advanced warship ever built. But who were they fighting? Jinwoo asked. They found the answer. In the next chamber. The walls here showed images of space battles. But the enemy wasn't another spacefaring race. The images showed things that looked like living shadows, creatures made of darkness that swallowed entire star systems. What are those things? Somin asked, staring at the terrifying images. I don't know, Deho replied. But whoever built? This ship was scared enough of them to build the ultimate weapon. As they explored deeper, they began to notice something strange. The ship seemed to be responding to their presence. Lights came on as they approached, doors opened automatically, and some of the wall displays changed to show different information. It's like the ship knows we're here, Jinwoo said. Impossible, Deho replied. The ship is dead. It has been for thousands of years. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. The ship felt alive somehow. Not just the lights and gravity, but something deeper. Something that was watching them. They came to a junction where several corridors met. In the center was a pillar covered in symbols. As they approached, the symbols began to glow brighter. Should we touch it? Somin asked. No, Deho said quickly. We don't know what it might do. But Somin was already reaching out her hand. Something about the pillar called to her. She felt like she had seen these symbols before, in dreams maybe, or in memories that weren't. Quite her own, so-min don't, Deho shouted. Too late. Somin's gloved hand touched the pillar. The effect was immediate. The entire ship came alive. Lights blazed throughout the corridors. Machines that had been silent for millennia began to hum with power. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy. What did you do? Deho demanded. I don't know, Somin replied. But that wasn't quite true. Somehow, she did know. The moment she touched the pillar, information had flooded into her mind. Not in words, but in pure understanding. The ship's name was the Eternal Vigil. It had been built by a race called the Predecessors, and it had been waiting for someone like her. We need to get back to the ship, Deho said, now. But as they turned to leave, they found their way blocked. A wall of energy shimmered across the corridor, preventing them from going back the way they came. We're trapped, Jinwoo said. No, Somin said slowly. We're being guided. The ship wanted them to go somewhere. She could feel it in her mind, a gentle but insistent pull toward the center of the vessel. Toward something important. The bridge, she said. It wants us to go to the bridge. How do you know that? Deho asked Dot, so Dashmin couldn't explain it. She just knew. The ship was talking to her, not in words, but in feelings and images. It was like having a conversation with someone who spoke a different language, but somehow she understood anyway. This way, she said, starting down a corridor that glowed brighter than the others. They had no choice but to follow. Behind them, more energy barriers appeared, cutting off other routes. The ship was herding them like sheep, guiding them toward its heart. As they walked, Somin felt the ship's presence growing stronger in her mind. It was old, so very old. It had seen civilizations rise and fall. It had fought battles that shook the galaxy, and it had been alone for so long. It's been waiting, she said, without thinking. Waiting for what? Deho asked. For us, Somin replied. For humans, but that made no sense. Humans hadn't existed when this ship was built. How could it have been waiting for a race that didn't exist yet? The answer was there in her mind, placed there by the ship's touch. But it was too big, too impossible to believe. They were walking toward the most important discovery in human history, and none of them were ready for what they were about to learn. The corridor led them deeper into the heart of the ancient ship. With each step, Somin felt the presence in her mind growing stronger. It wasn't threatening, but it was vast and old beyond imagination. Like standing next to an ocean and feeling how deep it was. The energy readings are off the charts, Dr. Veltar's voice crackled through their radios. The entire ship is generating power levels that should be impossible. What did you do in there? We're not sure, Deho replied, keeping his voice steady. He had been in dangerous situations before, but this felt different. This felt like they were walking into something that would change their lives forever. The corridor opened into the largest chamber they had seen yet. It was perfectly round and rose up several levels above them. The walls were covered in displays showing star maps, technical diagrams, and symbols that seemed to pulse with their own light. In the center of the room was a raised platform. On the platform stood a single console made of the same dark metal as the ship's hull, but this console was different. It was covered in patterns that seemed to move and shift when they looked at them. The patterns were beautiful and hypnotic, like looking at water flowing over stones. That has to be the main control center, Jinwoo said. So Dashmin walked toward the platform, feeling drawn to it like a moth to flame. The closer she got, the stronger the feeling became. The ship wanted her to approach the console. It needed her to approach it. Somin, stop, Deho ordered. We don't know what that thing does. But Somin barely heard him. The console was calling to her in a way she couldn't explain. It was like hearing her name called by a voice she had known all her life, even though she had never heard it before. It's safe, she said, not knowing how she knew that. It won't hurt us. How can you be sure? Deho demanded. So Dashmin turned to look at him. Her eyes were wide and bright, as if she was seeing something wonderful. Because it's been waiting for me. For us, for humans. Thalvex's voice came through the radio, tight with worry. Captain, I must strongly advise you to leave that chamber. Immediately. In Saurian legends, there are stories of ancient ships with consoles like that. They are called the Forbidden Touches. Nothing good comes from activating them. What kind of stories? Deho asked. Stories of entire civilizations that vanished after touching such devices. Stories of wars that burned across the galaxy. The legends say these consoles were left by the first ones, the race that came before all others. Somin felt a shiver of recognition at those words. The first ones, the predecessors. The ship had been showing her images of them in her mind. Tall beings that looked almost human, but with an ancient wisdom in their eyes. The legends might be true, she said softly. Around the room, the wall displays began to change. The star maps shifted to show different parts of the galaxy. Technical diagrams appeared and disappeared like pages being turned in a book. And slowly a pattern began to emerge. The displays were showing them a story. The story of a great war fought millions of years ago. A war between the builders of this ship and something else. Something dark and terrible that came from the empty spaces between galaxies. "Look at this," Jinwoo said, pointing to one of the displays. "These images, they're showing some kind of invasion." The display showed fleets of ships unlike anything they had ever seen. Ships that looked like they were made of darkness itself, swallowing the light of stars as they passed. "The Devourers," So-min whispered, the word coming from knowledge she didn't remember learning. "What did you say?" Daeho asked. "The Devourers," So-min repeated. "That's what the ship is calling them. They came from outside our galaxy, from the void between stars. They consumed everything they touched. Entire civilizations, whole solar systems, all turned into energy to feed their hunger." "How do you know this?" Daeho demanded. So Min looked at the console. The patterns on its surface were moving faster now, swirling like a whirlpool of light. "The ship is telling me. Ever since I touched that pillar, I can hear it. Not in words, but in understanding." More displays activated around the room. They showed the war in terrible detail. Planets burning, stars going dark. Fleets of ships fighting desperately against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. "The predecessors built 12 ships like this one," So-min continued, her voice distant as she received the information. 12 weapons of unimaginable power. Ships that could destroy star systems, tear holes in space itself, bend reality to their will. "And did they win?" Jinwoo asked. So Min was quiet for a moment, processing what the ship was showing her. Yes and no. They drove the Devourers back into the void. But the cost was terrible. The predecessors were nearly extinct. Their civilization was in ruins. "So what happened to them?" Daeho asked. "They did something desperate," So-min said. "They seeded the galaxy with their genetic material. Billions of worlds received the spark of life, the potential to evolve into something like them. They wanted to make sure that if the Devourers ever returned, there would be others who could fight them." Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying—" "Humans are their descendants," So-min finished, "along with dozens of other races. We all carry some part of their genetic heritage, but humans... Humans got the most complete genetic pattern. We're the closest thing to the original predecessors. The implications of this hit them all at once. Humans weren't just another species that had evolved on a random planet. They were the children of the galaxy's greatest warriors, bred specifically to fight an enemy that might return someday. That's why the ship responds to us," Jinwoo said in wonder. "That's why you can understand it. We're genetically compatible with their technology." So-min nodded. She was staring at the console now, feeling its pull stronger than ever. It's been waiting for 10,000 years for someone with the right genetic markers to find it. Someone who could activate its systems and command its power. "Don't even think about it," Daeho warned. "We don't know what would happen if you touched that thing." But So-min was already moving toward the console. She couldn't help herself. The ship needed her to touch it. More than that, she needed to touch it. It felt like the most important thing she would ever do. "So-min, that's an order," Daeho shouted. "Step away from that console." She paused, her hand just inches from the swirling patterns on the console's surface. "Captain, what if the Devourers come back? What if they're already on their way? This ship might be the only thing that can stop them. And what if touching that console kills you?" Daeho countered. "What if it drives you insane or turns you into something else?" "Then at least we'll know," So-min said. "At least we'll have tried." The displays around the room were showing more images now. Images of the other 11 ships scattered across the galaxy. All of them sleeping, waiting for someone to wake them up. "There are others out there," So-min said. 11 more ships like this one. "If I can activate this console, maybe I can find them. Maybe I can wake them up. Or maybe you'll wake up something else?" Thalvek's voice crackled through the radio. "Captain, the energy readings from that ship are becoming dangerous. If that console activates fully, it could destroy everything within 100 kilometers." Daeho looked at So-min, saw the determination in her eyes. He had known her for 3 years, had watched her solve impossible problems with machinery. If anyone could handle ancient alien technology, it would be her, but this was different. This wasn't just a machine. This was something that had been built to fight a war against creatures that could devour stars. "So-Min," he said quietly, "if you do this, there's no going back. Once you touch that console, everything changes." She nodded. "I know, but Captain, what if we're meant to be here? What if this isn't an accident? What if the ship called us here because it's time?" Around them, the displays flickered and changed. For just a moment, they showed images of space beyond the galaxy's edge. Empty space that suddenly didn't look so empty anymore. Something was moving out there in the dark. Something vast and hungry. Heading toward their galaxy, the Devourers were coming home. So-Min stood with her hand hovering over the console, feeling the pull of 10,000 years of waiting. The patterns on the surface swirled faster, as if sensing how close she was to making contact. Around the chamber, the displays flickered with images of distant stars and sleeping ships. "So-Min, please," Deho said one more time. "Think about what you're doing." She looked back at him. Her captain, who had given her a chance when no one else would. Who had trusted a young engineer with dreams bigger than her skills. "I am thinking about it, Captain. That's exactly what I'm doing." The ship's presence in her mind was gentle but insistent. It wasn't forcing her to touch the console. It couldn't force her. But it was showing her things, helping her understand why this moment mattered. Images flashed through her consciousness. The last battle of the ancient war. Predecessor ships fighting desperately against an enemy that consumed light itself. The moment when they realized they were losing, when they made the choice to sacrifice everything for a future they would never see. "They died for us," So-Min whispered, "all of them. They gave up their lives, their civilization, their entire species, so that someday someone could continue their fight." "That doesn't mean it has to be you," Jinwoo said. He had moved closer, ready to grab her if she tried to touch the console. "Doesn't it?" So-Min asked. "I'm the one who can hear the ship. I'm the one it's been waiting for. Maybe this is why I became an engineer. Maybe this is why I've always been able to understand machines that other people couldn't figure out." She thought about her childhood, how she had always been drawn to broken things. Computers that wouldn't work, engines that had given up, devices that everyone else said were hopeless. She had fixed them all, not because she was particularly smart, but because she could feel what was wrong with them, just like she could feel what was right about this console. "The ship isn't just a weapon," she said, understanding flooding through her. "It's alive, not biological life, but something else. The predecessors didn't just build these ships, they poured part of themselves into them. Their knowledge, their memories, their purpose, all the more reason not to touch it," Deho said. "We don't know what connecting with something like that might do to your mind." But So-Min was already reaching out. She couldn't stop herself anymore. The need to make contact was overwhelming, like needing to breathe after holding her breath. Too long, her fingers touched the console's surface. The universe exploded into light and sound and sensation beyond anything she had ever imagined. For a moment that lasted forever, So-Min was connected to something vast and ancient and impossibly complex. She felt the ship's joy at finally being awakened. Its relief at finding someone who could understand it. Knowledge poured into her mind. Not words or images, but pure understanding. The ship's name was the Eternal Vigil. It had been the flagship of the predecessor fleet, commanded by beings whose names were lost to time, but whose purpose lived on in the ship's memory. She learned about the Devourers, creatures of living darkness that existed in the void between galaxies. They fed on energy of all kinds, heat, light, life itself. They had consumed entire galaxies before coming to this one, leaving nothing but cold, empty space behind them. She learned about the war, fought across 1,000,000 worlds over 10,000 years. How the predecessors had built weapons that could crack planets and shields that could protect entire solar systems. How they had fought with courage and desperation against an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. And she learned about the final choice. When it became clear that the predecessors could not win, they had made a plan. They would seed the galaxy with their genetic material, creating new species that might someday be able to continue the fight. And they would build 12 ultimate weapons, ships that contained the sum total of their knowledge and power, ships that would wait in the darkness until the children of the predecessors were ready to claim them. So-min! Daeho's voice seemed to come from very far away. So-min, can you hear me? She opened her eyes, not remembering when she had closed them. The console was glowing brightly now, its patterns moving in complex spirals. Around the chamber, every display was active, showing star charts and technical diagrams and weapon specifications. "I'm okay," she said, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "I'm more than okay. I'm connected." The ship's systems were opening to her like flowers blooming in sunlight. She could feel its massive engines, dormant for millennia, but ready to drive it faster than any ship had ever traveled. She could sense its weapons, devices that could tear holes in space-time itself. She could touch its shields, barriers that could withstand the destruction of stars. Connected to what? Daeho demanded. "To everything," So-min replied. "Captain, this ship, it's beyond anything we ever imagined. The predecessors built it to fight a war against creatures that could destroy galaxies. It has weapons that could crack planets, engines that can fold space, shields that could protect entire solar systems." Jinwoo was staring at the displays around them. "These readouts, I can't understand half of them, but the power levels. This ship could destroy our entire battle fleet without even trying." "It could," So-min agreed, "but it doesn't want to destroy anything. It wants to protect. That's what it was built for. That's what it's been waiting to do." Through the ship's sensors, she could feel the Prosperity's edge nearby, tiny and fragile compared to the massive vessel they were now aboard. She could sense her crewmates' fear and confusion, their amazement at what they had discovered. And beyond that, much further away, she could sense something else. Something dark and cold, moving through the empty space between stars. The Devourers were coming, just as the ship's memories had warned. They were still far away, but they were definitely coming. "How long do we have?" She asked the ship without speaking aloud. The answer came not in words but in understanding. "Years, maybe decades, but not centuries." The galaxy's long peace was almost over. "So-min," Daeho said carefully, "what's happening to you? Your voice sounds different." She looked at him and realized he was right. She felt different too, stronger, smarter, more aware of everything around her. The ship's knowledge was becoming part of her, just as she was becoming part of it. "I'm changing," she said simply. The ship needs someone who can interface with its systems, someone who can command its power. The predecessors designed it that way, but the bond changes both partners. Changes how? Daeho asked so Dashmin could feel the answer forming in her mind. She would still be human, but she would be more than human too. She would have access to knowledge that had been lost for 10,000 years. She would be able to control technology that could reshape reality itself, but she would also be bound to the ship, responsible for its mission, carrying the weight of an entire civilization's last hope. "I'll be okay," she said, hoping it was true. "But we need to contact the authorities. The galaxy needs to know about this. About the Devourers, about the other ships, about what's coming." Around them, the ship's systems continued to come online. Lights that had been dark for millennia began to glow. Machines that had slept in silence began to hum with power. The eternal vigil was waking up completely, and it was magnificent and terrifying at the same time. "The ship wants to leave this place," So-min said, feeling its eagerness like a living thing. "It's been hiding here for 10,000 years, but now that it's awake, it has work to do." "What kind of work?" Jinwoo asked. Dashmin smiled, but there was something different about her smile now. Something ancient and determined. "We need to find the other ships. We need to wake them up. And we need to prepare for the war that's coming." Through the ship's sensors, she could feel the Devourers moving closer, still light years away but approaching steadily. The galaxy had been at peace for so long that most species had forgotten how to fight. But the Eternal Vigil remembered. It had been built for war, and it was ready to fight again. The question was whether the galaxies Current inhabitants were ready to join the battle for their survival. The eternal vigil was fully awake now, and So-Min could feel its vast consciousness like a warm presence in her mind. Through the ship's sensors, she could see everything within 100 light years. Every planet, every ship, every asteroid, floating in space. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying new authority, "we need to get back to our ship. There are things you need to see." Daeho looked at her carefully. So-Min still looked like his young engineer, but something fundamental had changed. She moved differently now, with a confidence that hadn't been there before. Her eyes seemed to see more than they should. "What kind of things?" he asked. "Proof?" So-Min replied. "The ship is showing me where the other predecessor vessels are hidden. But more importantly, it's showing me what's coming from beyond the galaxy's edge." They made their way back through the ship's corridors, but the journey was different now. The ship helped them, opening doors before they reached them, lighting their path with gentle blue illumination. It was like walking through a living thing that wanted to help them. When they reached the hull breach where they had entered, So-Min paused. "The ship wants to seal this opening. It needs to be space-worthy again. Can it do that?" Jinwoo asked. The breach looked pretty serious. So-Min touched the wall near the opening. Under her hand, the dark metal began to flow like liquid, slowly closing the gap. Within minutes, the hull was whole again, as if it had never been damaged. "Self-repair systems," she explained. "The predecessors built their ships to survive anything. This one has been fixing itself slowly for 10,000 years. Now that it's fully active, the repairs will go much faster." They crossed back to the Prosperity's edge through an airlock that the ship created for them. As soon as they were aboard their own vessel, Daeho called for a full crew meeting in the main conference room. The room was small and cramped, nothing like the vast chambers of the ancient ship. But it felt safe and familiar, a reminder of the life they had known before everything changed. "All right," Daeho said once everyone was seated. "I need you all to listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. What we found on that ship changes everything we thought we knew about the galaxy." He told them about the predecessors, about the ancient war, about humanity's true origins. He told them about the Devourers and the 12 ships built to fight them. And he told them about So-Min's connection to the Eternal Vigil. When he finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Thalvek spoke. "This is difficult to accept. You're saying that humans are the descendants of an extinct race of super beings?" "Not super beings," So-Min corrected, "just very advanced. And they're not entirely extinct. Part of them lives on in their ships, and in the genetic patterns they left behind." Dr. Veltar's crystal body pulsed with thought. The implications are staggering. If this is true, then human technology should be capable of interfacing with predecessor systems in ways that other species cannot. "It is," So-Min confirmed. "The ship has been running scans on all of us. Humans have the strongest genetic compatibility, but other species have some level of connection too. Especially the older races like the Etherians and Saurians. What about the Devourers?" Myra asked from her pilot station. "How long before they get here?" So-Min closed her eyes, reaching out to the Eternal Vigil sensors. The ship was scanning deep space, looking for signs of the approaching enemy. What it found was disturbing. "The first scouts are already in our galaxy," she said, quietly. "They're moving slowly, testing our defenses, learning about current civilization levels. The main force is still decades away, but the advanced scouts are here now." "Where?" Daeho demanded. "The outer rim, mostly. They're staying away from the major shipping lanes and populated systems, but they're consuming isolated outposts and research stations. The disappearances are being blamed on pirates or equipment failures." Jinwoo was working at his communication console. "I'm trying to contact the Galactic Defense Command, but they're not responding to our emergency channels." "They won't believe you," So-Min said. "Not without proof. The galaxy has been at peace for so long that most people have forgotten war is even possible." "Then we give them proof," Daeho decided. "So-Min, can that ship of yours provide evidence that even the government can't ignore?" Somin smiled, and for a moment she looked like her old self again. Captain, the Eternal Vigil can do things that will rewrite every physics textbook in the galaxy. I think we can manage to get their attention. Over the next several hours, Somin worked with the ancient ship to prepare a demonstration. The Eternal Vigil moved closer to the Prosperity's edge, its massive bulk dwarfing the smaller vessel. Up close, the salvage crew could see the incredible detail of its construction. The hull is self-repairing, Somin explained through the radio. The metal isn't just metal, it's a programmable material that can restructure itself at the molecular level. The ship could change its entire shape if it needed to. To demonstrate, she had the ship extend a docking tube that connected to their airlock. The tube formed itself in seconds, growing out of the hull like a living thing. Fascinating, Dr. Veltar murmured. The energy requirements for that kind of matter manipulation should be enormous. The ship has power sources we can barely understand, Somin replied. It draws energy directly from the quantum foam that underlies spacetime itself, essentially unlimited power. Captain Haijin Choi arrived 3 hours later in a Galactic Defense Force cruiser. She was a career military officer, skeptical by nature and trained to deal with unusual situations. But nothing in her training had prepared her for this. Captain Kim, she said, as soon as she came aboard the Prosperity's edge, your emergency. Transmission was ... unusual. You claim to have found an alien weapon ship? Not alien, Daeho corrected. Human, or rather, built by our ancestors. Haijin looked out the main viewport at the Eternal Vigil, floating silent and dark beside them. That ship is 3 kilometers long. Our records show no civilization in this galaxy has ever built anything that large. Our records are wrong, Somin said, stepping into the conference room. Haijin stared at her in surprise. Somin looked normal, but there was something about her presence that seemed to fill the room. You're the one who's supposedly connected. To this ship? Haijin asked. Connected isn't quite the right word, Somin replied. I'm interfacing with its systems. The ship needs a biological component to function properly. The predecessors designed it that way? Prove it, Haijin challenged. Somin smiled and closed her eyes. Outside the viewport, the Eternal Vigil began to change. Its hull started to glow with soft blue light, and the patterns carved into its surface became visible from kilometers away. Then slowly the massive ship began to move, not with the jerky acceleration of normal engines, but with smooth, impossible grace. The ship spun in place like a dancer, its 3-kilometer length moving, as easily as a fighter craft. Then it accelerated away from them, covering thousands of kilometers in seconds before stopping instantly with no apparent deceleration effects. Impossible, Haijin whispered. The G-forces from that kind of acceleration would crush any crew. The ship has inertial dampeners that can negate gravity itself, Somin explained. Inside the ship, you don't feel any acceleration at all, no matter how fast it moves. The demonstration continued for an hour. The Eternal Vigil showed off capabilities that defied everything they thought they knew about physics. It folded space to move instantly from one location to another. It fired energy beams that could precisely destroy asteroids thousands of kilometers away. It generated shields that could deflect the energy output of a small star. When it was over, Haijin sat in stunned silence for several minutes. This changes everything, she finally said. If what you're telling me is true, if there really are creatures coming to destroy our galaxy, then we need those ships. All of them. That's what we've been trying to tell you, Daeho said. Where are the others? Haijin asked. The other 11 ships? Somin consulted with the Eternal Vigil. Scattered across the galaxy. Hidden in nebulae, buried in asteroid fields, parked in the empty space between stars. The ship can locate them, but waking them up will be difficult. Each one needs someone with the right genetic compatibility to interface with its systems. More humans? Mostly humans, yes. But the ship thinks some of the other descendant races might be able to connect too, with the right preparation. Haijin stood up, her decision made. Then we find them, all of them. And we wake them up before these devourers arrive in force. But As she spoke, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Jin Woo looked up from his communication station, his face pale with fear. "Captain," he said, "I'm receiving distress calls from the Kepler system. 3 colonies have gone dark in the last hour. No explanation, no warning, they just stop transmitting." So Min reached out to the Eternal Vigil, using its sensors to scan the Kepler system. What she found made her blood run cold. "It's not a scout," she said quietly. "It's a herald. One of the major devourers has arrived ahead of schedule. The war had begun." The distress calls from the Kepler system stopped abruptly, leaving only empty static on the communication channels. Jin Woo worked frantically at his console, trying to re-establish contact with the 3 colonies that had gone silent. "Nothing," he reported. "It's like they never existed." So-min stood perfectly still, her eyes closed as she reached out through the Eternal Vigil's advanced sensors. The ancient ship could see things that normal sensors couldn't detect, peer through space and time in ways that defied understanding. "Show me," she whispered to the ship. Images flooded her mind. The Kepler system as it had been just hours ago, 3 thriving colonies on different worlds, millions of people living their daily lives. Mining operations on the asteroid belts, cargo ships moving between planets, children playing in parks. Under alien suns, then darkness had come. "What do you see?" Captain Haijin asked urgently. Min opened her eyes, and for a moment they reflected the light strangely, as if she was looking at something very far away. "It's worse than we thought. The Herald isn't just attacking the colonies. It's consuming them." "What does that mean?" Daeho demanded. "The entire system is being drained," So-min explained, her voice tight with horror. "The Herald is absorbing the energy from the stars, the heat from the planets, the life force from every living thing. In a few more hours, the Kepler system will be nothing but cold, dead rocks floating in the dark." Haijin grabbed her communication device. "I need to contact Fleet Command immediately. We have to evacuate the surrounding systems." "It's too late for evacuation," So-min said quietly. "The Herald moves faster than any ship we have. It can drain an entire star system in less than a day. By the time evacuation orders are given, there will be nothing left to evacuate." "Then what do we do?" Haijin asked. Min looked at her crewmates. These people who had become her family over the years of working together. Daeho, who had given her a chance when no one else would. Jin Woo, who always stayed calm in a crisis. Dr. Veltar, whose ancient wisdom had guided them through so many difficult situations. Thalvex, whose caution had saved their lives more times than she could count. "We fight," she said simply. "Fight that thing?" Myra spoke up from her pilot station. "You said yourself it can drain entire star systems. What can one ship do against something like that?" "The Eternal Vigil isn't just one ship," So-min replied. "It's the most powerful weapon ever built by the most advanced civilization in galactic history. It was designed specifically to fight creatures like the Herald." She reached out to the ancient ship again, feeling its eagerness to finally fulfill its purpose after 10,000 years of waiting. The ship's weapon systems came online, devices that operated on principles barely understood by current science. "The ship has something called a reality anchor," So-min explained. "It can lock space-time in place, preventing the Herald from using its dimensional feeding techniques. And it has weapons that can disrupt the Herald's energy absorption patterns." "Has it ever fought one of these Heralds before?" Haijin asked. Min consulted the ship's memories. "Yes, during the last war this ship destroyed 17 Heralds. But that was when it had a full crew of predecessors, beings who had trained their entire lives to interface with its systems." "And now it has you," Daeho said. "One human engineer who's been connected to it for less than a day." "I know it's not ideal," So-min admitted, "but I'm learning fast. The ship is teaching me, downloading its knowledge directly into my mind. It's overwhelming sometimes, but I can handle it." Captain Haijin made a decision. "I'm ordering my ship to evacuate all non-essential personnel to a safe distance. Then I'm coming with you." "You don't understand," So-min said. "This isn't like a normal space battle. The Herald doesn't just destroy ships, it corrupts them. It turns their own weapons against them, drives their crews insane with visions of cosmic horror. Most species can't even look at a Herald directly without losing their minds. What about humans? Hyjin asked. So Dashmin smiled grimly. Humans are different. We inherited something from the predecessors that most other species don't have: mental resilience. The ability to face impossible odds and keep fighting anyway. The predecessors called it the defiance gene. Through the eternal vigil sensors, she could see the Herald approaching their location. It was massive beyond imagination, a creature of living darkness that seemed to bend space around itself. Where it passed, stars dimmed and planets went cold. It knows we're here, So-Min said. It can sense the ship's awakening. It's coming to destroy us before we can become a threat. How long do we have? Daeho asked. So Dashmin closed her eyes, calculating. The Herald's approach speed, 6 hours, maybe 7. That's not enough time to evacuate the surrounding systems, Hyjin said. No, So-Min agreed, but it might be enough time to stop it. She turned to her crewmates. I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we fight the Herald, some of us might not survive. These creatures are incredibly dangerous, and even with the Eternal Vigil's power, victory isn't guaranteed. What choice do we have? Dr. Veltar asked. If we don't fight, how many more systems will be consumed? How many billions of lives will be lost? The doctor's right, Thalvex said. In Saurian philosophy, there are times when one must choose between personal safety and the greater good. This appears to be such a time. Daeho looked around at his crew. All right then, we fight. So-Min, what do you need from us? The ship can operate with just me interfacing with its systems, So-Min said. But it works better with a full crew. Each of you can connect to different ship functions, help distribute the load. Is it safe? Jinwoo asked. Safer than facing the Herald in a normal ship, So-Min replied. The Eternal Vigil has psychic shields that can protect your minds from the Herald's influence. But connecting to the ship will change you, just like it changed me. You'll never be quite the same afterward. One by one, they agreed to the connection. Even Captain Hyjin decided to join them, leaving her own ship under the command of her first officer with orders to retreat if the battle went badly. The process of connecting the crew to the Eternal Vigil was unlike anything they had ever experienced. So-Min guided them to different control stations throughout the ship's vast bridge. Each station was designed to interface with a specific biological pattern, adapting itself to its user's genetic structure. Daeho found himself connected to the ship's tactical systems, suddenly understanding weapon configurations that could reshape reality itself. Jinwoo interfaced with communications and sensors, his awareness expanding to encompass entire star systems. Dr. Veltar connected to the ship's scientific instruments, her crystalline nature allowing her to process data at incredible speeds. Thalvex took control of defensive systems, his natural caution perfectly suited to managing shields that could withstand the destruction of planets. Mira interfaced with the navigation systems, learning to pilot a ship that could fold space and move between dimensions. And Captain Hyjin connected to the ship's strategic planning center, her military training helping her coordinate the complex dance of battle against an enemy unlike anything in recorded history. This is incredible, Hyjin breathed as the ship's knowledge flowed into her mind. I can see the entire tactical situation. Every ship in the sector, every possible approach vector, every strategic option. The ship is designed to fight wars across multiple galaxies, So-Min explained. Its strategic systems can process battlefield information on a scale that normal minds can't comprehend. Through the ship's sensors, they watched the Herald approach. It was beautiful in its own terrible way, a creature of pure darkness that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Smaller entities accompanied it, scout ships and feeding vessels that prepared systems for consumption. It's not just one creature, Dr. Veltar observed. It's an entire ecosystem of darkness, a hierarchy of beings designed to consume reality itself. The predecessors fought things like this for 10,000 years, So-Min said. They learned that heralds aren't just destroyers, they're farmers. They consume civilizations at their peak, harvesting the maximum amount of organized energy. Then why attack us now? Hyjin asked. Galactic civilization isn't at its peak yet. Somin felt the answer from the ship's deep memories. Because we found the eternal vigil, the herald can sense what this ship is, what it's capable of. It's attacking now to prevent us from becoming a threat? The herald had crossed half the distance to their location. Soon, they would be in weapon range of each other. The battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy was about to begin. Remember, Somin told her crewmates as they prepared for combat, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every living thing in the galaxy. We're fighting to prove that the darkness doesn't always win. The Eternal Vigil's weapons came online, reality-bending devices that had been silent for 10 millennia. The ship's shields activated. Barriers that could protect entire worlds from destruction dot in the distance. The heralds sensed their preparations and began to accelerate, eager to snuff out this new threat before it could grow stronger. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin. The herald arrived like a living nightmare made of stars and darkness. Through the Eternal Vigil's sensors, the crew could see it clearly, a creature the size of a moon, but shaped like no natural thing. It had tentacles of pure shadow that stretched for thousands of kilometers, and at its center was something that hurt to look at directly, even through the ship's protective filters. My God, Captain Hyjin whispered, how do you kill something like that? Very carefully, Somin replied, her hands moving over the ancient controls with growing confidence. The ship's weapon systems were unlike anything that existed in modern warfare. They didn't just destroy matter, they could unravel the fundamental forces that held reality together. The herald's first attack wasn't physical. It sent out waves of psychic terror, visions designed to drive organic minds insane with the knowledge of their own insignificance. Most species would have been paralyzed with fear, unable to fight back against such cosmic horror, but the crew of the Eternal Vigil was different. The ship's psychic shields protected them, and their human heritage gave them something more, the ability to face the impossible and keep fighting anyway. It's trying to get inside our heads, Jinwoo reported from his sensor station. I can feel it pushing against my mind, showing me images of dead worlds and burned-out stars. Don't look at the images directly, Somin warned. Let the ship filter them for you. Focus on your station, on your job. That's how we win this, by doing what we came here to do. Daeho was studying the tactical displays, learning to read weapon systems that operated on principles he had never imagined. Somin, what exactly are these weapons supposed to do? The primary weapons are called reality disruptors, Somin explained, her voice carrying knowledge she had gained from the ship. They don't fire energy beams or projectiles. They fire concentrated packets of altered physics. When they hit a target, they change the fundamental laws that govern how matter and energy behave in that area. And that kills the herald? Hyjin asked. Theoretically, Somin said. Heralds exist partially outside normal space-time. They feed by manipulating the quantum foam that underlies reality. If we can disrupt their connection to that quantum layer, they should collapse back into normal matter and die. Should? Thalvex asked nervously. The predecessors destroyed 17 heralds during the last war, Somin said. But every battle was different. These creatures learn and adapt. This herald has probably never faced weapons like ours before, but it will try to counter them. The herald had closed to within weapon range now. Through the sensors, they could see its smaller companion creatures spreading out in attack formation. Scout ships the size of asteroids, feeding vessels that look like mechanical squids, and something else, creatures that seem to be made of living mathematics, geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly. Those are mind reavers, Dr. Veltar identified, her crystalline nature allowing her to process the visual data without being affected by it. They're designed to break down organized thought patterns. They turn the crew of enemy ships into mindless drones. Not this crew, Somin said firmly. Fire the reality disruptors? The Eternal Vigil's main weapons activated with a sound like reality tearing. Lines of twisted spacetime lanced out from the ship, moving faster than light, but somehow still visible to the naked eye. Where they struck the Herald's companion creatures, impossible things happened. One of the scout ships simply stopped existing, not destroyed, but erased from reality as if it had never been built. A feeding vessel turned inside out, its internal structure becoming its external hull in a transformation that violated every law of physics. A group of mind reavers collapsed into a single point of infinite density before exploding outward in a shower of crystallized mathematics. Direct hits? Deho reported. We've destroyed about half their escort vessels, but the Herald itself was unaffected. The reality disruptor beams passed through it as if it wasn't entirely there. Which, So-Min realized, was exactly the problem. It's existing in multiple dimensions at once, she said. Our weapons are only hitting the parts of it that exist in normal space. The rest of it is hiding in the quantum foam. The Herald's counterattack was swift and terrible. Tentacles of living darkness reached across space toward the Eternal Vigil, each one crackling with energy that could drain the life from entire worlds. But the ancient ship's shields held, barriers of crystallized spacetime that deflected the Herald's feeding beams. Shields at 90%, Thalvex reported, but they're dropping. That thing is trying to drain our power directly from the quantum level. Then we need to fight it on the quantum level, So-Min decided. She reached deeper into the ship's systems, accessing weapons that the predecessors had built for exactly this kind of battle. Activating quantum torpedoes, she announced. The torpedoes were unlike any weapon in galactic history. They weren't physical objects at all, but packets of weaponized probability that existed in all possible dimensions simultaneously. When they struck their target, they would force it to exist in only one dimension, making it vulnerable to conventional attack. The torpedoes hit the Herald and reality convulsed around the impact points. For a moment, the creature became fully visible, its true form revealed as something that was part machine, part living tissue, and part pure energy. It screamed across all frequencies, a sound that shattered asteroids and made nearby stars flicker. Now! So-Min shouted. All weapons full power. The Eternal Vigil unleashed everything it had. Reality disruptors tore holes in space around the Herald. Gravity weapons created crushing forces that could collapse neutron stars. Temporal displacers threw parts of the creature backward and forward. In time, creating paradoxes that unraveled its existence, the Herald fought back desperately, sending out waves of corrupted energy that tried to turn the ship's own systems against it. For a terrifying moment, the lights flickered as the creature's influence tried to penetrate their defenses. It's trying to corrupt our ship's computer systems, Jinwoo warned. I'm seeing cascade failures throughout the network. The ship is fighting it, So-Min said, feeling the Eternal Vigil's ancient intelligence battling against the Herald's influence. The predecessors built safeguards against this kind of attack. The battle raged for hours, though time itself seemed twisted. In the space around the Herald, sometimes minutes passed in seconds, sometimes seconds stretched into hours. The crew fought not just against the creature's weapons, but against their own fear and exhaustion. Mira found herself piloting the ship through dimensions that didn't have names, navigating through spaces where up and down had no meaning. Dr. Veltar processed sensor data that described impossible geometries and self-contradictory physics. Thalvex managed shields that had to protect against attacks that came from yesterday and tomorrow simultaneously, but slowly, gradually, they were winning. The Herald's attacks were growing weaker, its form becoming less stable. The creature that had consumed entire star systems was being destroyed by the combined will of 6 organic beings and 1 ancient ship. It's collapsing, Hyjin reported. From her strategic station, the quantum torpedoes severed its connection to the dimensional substrate. It's being forced back into normal spacetime. The Herald's death throes were spectacular and terrifying. As it collapsed back into normal matter, it released all the energy it had consumed over millions of years. Stars flared to life and died in seconds. Space itself rippled like water, creating gravitational waves that could be felt across half the galaxy when it was over. Nothing remained of the Herald but a slowly expanding cloud of exotic particles. The creature that had terrorized countless civilizations was finally dead. "We did it," Deho said in amazement. "We actually killed that thing." But Somin wasn't celebrating. Through the ship's deep space sensors, she could see something that filled her with dread. The Herald's death had sent out a signal, a psychic scream that had been heard across the galaxy and beyond. "What's wrong?" Hyjin asked, seeing Somin's expression. "The Herald's death cry," Somin explained. "It's alerted the main Devourer fleet to our location. They know about the Eternal Vigil now. They know that someone has awakened one of the predecessor ships." Through the sensors, she could see them stirring in the dark space between galaxies. Hundreds of heralds, thousands of lesser creatures, all turning their attention toward their galaxy. The force that was heading their way was large enough to consume entire galactic clusters. "How long do we have?" Hyjin asked. So-Min calculated the approaching fleet's speed. Factoring in their ability to fold space and move between dimensions, maybe 10 years, 15 at the outside. "Then we use that time?" Deho said firmly. "We find the other ships. We wake them up. We build an alliance of every species in the galaxy. And we teach them to fight like we just did," Myra added. "Like humans fight. With courage and stubbornness and the refusal to give up." Somin smiled, feeling hope for the first time since the battle began. "The predecessors chose well when they seeded this galaxy with their genetic heritage. They created races that could face the darkness and win. The Eternal Vigil turned away from the dissipating remains of the Herald and set course for the galactic core, where the largest concentrations of inhabited worlds waited." 3 months after the battle with the Herald, the galaxy was a different place. The news of the ancient enemy's return had spread through every inhabited system, causing panic in some sectors and desperate preparation in others. But slowly, surely, the various species were beginning to work together in ways they never had before. So-Min stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, watching as construction crews from a dozen different worlds worked to build the first predecessor academy on a small moon in the Centauri system. The academy would train the next generation of ship interfaces, humans and other compatible species who could bond with the ancient vessels. She had changed even more over the past months. The connection to the ship had deepened, making her something more than human, but not quite something else. She could exist partially in normal space and partially in the quantum realm where the ship's consciousness resided. It was lonely sometimes, but it was also wonderful in ways she couldn't explain. "Any word from the search teams?" Captain Hyjin asked as she joined Somin at the viewing window. "2 more ships found this week," Somin replied. "The Stellar Guardian was discovered in the Horsehead Nebula, exactly where the Eternal Vigil's record said it would be. And the Deep Watcher was located in the Outer Rim, hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid." Like 7 ships total," Hyjin said. 7 out of 12. 7 awakened ships," Somin corrected. "We've actually located all 12 now. The problem is finding compatible interfaces for the remaining 5. It had been one of their biggest challenges. While humans had the strongest genetic compatibility with predecessor technology, each ship required a slightly different neural pattern. Some humans could interface with multiple ships, but the connection was so intense that most people could only bond with one vessel at a time. "How are the new interfaces adapting?" Hyjin asked. So-Min smiled, thinking of the brave souls who had volunteered to bond with the ancient ships. There was Minho, a young pilot who had connected with the Starbreaker and was already mastering its reality-warping navigation systems. There was Yunji, a communications officer who had bonded with the Void Walker and could now send messages instantly across galactic distances. Each new interface brought their own personality to their ship, creating unique partnerships that the predecessors probably never anticipated. The ancient vessels were learning too, adapting to work with beings who were similar to their creators but not identical. "They're doing better than expected," Somin said. "The ships seem to enjoy having crews again. 10,000 years is a long Time to be alone. Captain Deho approached them, carrying a datapad filled with reports from across the galaxy.